Maya Rodriguez wiped down the espresso machine for the third time that morning, watching the insurance executives in expensive suits laugh loudly at their corner table. They had no idea that the quiet woman making their double-shot Americanos had once disassembled and reassembled weapons blindfolded under enemy fire. In exactly 6 hours, when armed gunmen would storm into Pinnacle Coffee demanding something far more valuable than money, Maya would have 12 seconds to prove that muscle memory never dies, and that the deadliest person in the room is often the one nobody notices. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The morning rush at Pinnacle Coffee in downtown Seattle was in full swing, and Maya Rodriguez moved behind the counter with the same precision she had once used to clear buildings in Kandahar. Steam hissed from the milk frother as she crafted another perfect latte, her movements economical and purposeful. At 29, she had traded her Army Ranger uniform for a green apron, but the discipline remained embedded in every gesture. "Maya, Table 7 is still waiting for their order," called Jennifer Walsh, the shift supervisor who had made it clear from day one that she considered Maya nothing more than another replaceable barista. Jennifer was 23, fresh out of college with a business degree, and possessed the kind of confidence that came from never having her assumptions truly tested. "Try to pick up the pace. This isn't a government job where you can move at whatever speed you want." Maya nodded without responding, a habit she had developed over her 8 months at Pinnacle Coffee. Jennifer's comments about government work were a constant theme, delivered with the casual dismissiveness of someone who had never considered what government service actually entailed. Maya had never mentioned her military background to her coworkers, finding it easier to let them fill in their own assumptions about her quiet demeanor and precise work habits. The coffee shop occupied the ground floor of the Meridian Tower, a gleaming 40-story office building that housed 3 major corporations, 2 law firms, and the regional headquarters of Consolidated Insurance Group. Maya knew the building's layout better than most security guards, having studied it with the same thoroughness she had once applied to mapping enemy compounds. Old habits died hard, and situational awareness was one habit Maya had no intention of breaking. "Can you believe they're making us stay late for that corporate event tonight?" complained Ashley Chen, a part-time barista who split her time between Pinnacle Coffee and her graduate studies in psychology. Ashley was kind-hearted but possessed an academic's tendency to overthink simple situations. "I mean, serving coffee at some insurance company's quarterly meeting? That's not exactly what I signed up for." Maya continued preparing drinks, listening to the conversation while tracking the movement of customers throughout the shop. The corporate event Ashley mentioned was actually a high-level security briefing for Consolidated Insurance Group, something Maya had pieced together from overheard conversations and the increased presence of men in dark suits, conducting routine security assessments throughout the building. "It's just coffee service, Ashley," Jennifer said, checking her phone for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "We set up, serve drinks for 2 hours, clean up, and go home. Easy money." Jennifer's casual attitude toward security protocols would have earned her a sharp reprimand in Maya's former life, but civilian workplaces operated by different rules. The morning crowd included the usual mix of office workers, tourists, and what Maya privately categorized as watchers, individuals whose behavior patterns suggested professional training in observation and assessment. Today there were more watchers than usual, men who ordered simple drinks and positioned themselves with clear sightlines to both entrances. Maya noted their locations without changing her own routine, filing the information away with the same automatic precision she had once used to identify potential threats in Afghan marketplaces. "Maya, you're doing that thing again where you stare at customers like you're memorizing their faces," Jennifer said, her tone carrying the edge of someone who enjoyed pointing out perceived flaws in others. "It makes people uncomfortable. Try to look friendlier." Maya adjusted her expression slightly, maintaining the pleasant neutrality that civilian service jobs required while continuing her environmental assessment. Jennifer's criticism stung not because it was harsh, but because it revealed how completely her coworkers misunderstood her careful attention to detail. What Jennifer interpreted as unfriendliness was actually the hypervigilance that had kept Maya and her squad alive through 3 combat deployments. The disconnect between her current role and her background was a constant source of internal tension. Maya had left the Army with commendations for leadership under fire, expert marksman ratings that placed her in the top 1% of all soldiers, and tactical training that few people outside special operations ever received. Now she measured her success by the consistency of her foam patterns and her ability to remember complex drink orders without writing them down. "Did you guys hear about the break-ins downtown?" Ashley asked, wiping down tables near the window. 3 different buildings in the past month. The news said they weren't regular burglaries. Nothing was stolen, but security systems were compromised and files were accessed. Maya's attention sharpened, though she gave no outward sign of increased interest. The pattern Ashley described suggested professional intelligence gathering rather than random crime, the kind of systematic reconnaissance that preceded larger operations. Maya had conducted similar assessments herself, though for different purposes, and under military authority. "Probably just corporate espionage," Jennifer dismissed, more interested in her phone than the conversation. "Big companies stealing secrets from each other. Nothing that affects us." Jennifer's casual dismissal of potential security threats was typical of her management style, which prioritized immediate customer service over broader situational awareness. Maya had observed this pattern in civilian workplaces before, a tendency to compartmentalize responsibilities so narrowly that obvious connections between events were missed or ignored. The lunch rush brought a new wave of customers, including several men who paid cash for simple drinks and left immediately after scanning the shop's interior layout. Maya served them with the same professional courtesy she showed all customers, while noting their behavior patterns and physical characteristics. Their movements suggested military or law enforcement training, and their interest in the coffee shop's security features was poorly concealed. "Maya, you need to smile more," Jennifer said during a brief lull between customer waves. "Customer service is about creating a welcoming atmosphere, not looking like you're planning someone's funeral." Maya forced a broader smile, wondering if Jennifer would be quite so concerned about atmospheric hospitality if she understood the kind of planning Maya was actually doing. The increased security presence, the pattern of reconnaissance activities, and the timing of tonight's corporate event were creating a threat profile that Maya's training compelled her to analyze, even though she had no official authority to act on her conclusions. Ashley returned from her break carrying a newspaper, her expression troubled. "Look at this," she said, showing the headline to Maya and Jennifer. "Police think the downtown break-ins are connected to something bigger. They're asking building security to report any unusual activity." Maya glanced at the article, noting details that the reporter had likely missed or downplayed. The break-ins had targeted buildings with specific corporate tenants, all companies involved in government contracting or classified information handling. The pattern suggested intelligence gathering by hostile actors, not random criminal activity. "We should probably mention this to building security," Ashley suggested, her psychology training making her more attuned to behavioral patterns than Jennifer's business-focused perspective. "And tell them what?" Jennifer asked dismissively. "That some guys bought coffee and looked around? They'll think we're paranoid. Besides, we're just baristas. Security isn't our job." Maya continued working, but Jennifer's words crystallized something that had been bothering her for months. The assumption that her role as a barista somehow limited her capacity for broader awareness or meaningful contribution was both inaccurate and potentially dangerous. Maya's training hadn't evaporated when she changed careers. It had simply become invisible to people who couldn't imagine that their coffee server might possess skills entirely unrelated to beverage preparation. Happily, the afternoon wore on, with its usual rhythm of customer service and workplace conversation, but Maya found herself increasingly focused on tonight's corporate event. The convergence of suspicious reconnaissance activity, increased security presence, and a gathering of high-value intelligence targets created exactly the kind of scenario her military training had prepared her to recognize and disrupt. As closing time approached, Maya realized that her 8 months of invisible competence were about to be tested in ways that Jennifer, Ashley, and the rest of her civilian coworkers couldn't possibly imagine. The question wasn't whether her skills remained sharp after her transition to civilian life. Muscle memory and tactical thinking didn't fade that quickly. The question was whether she would have the opportunity to use those skills when the situation demanded it, or whether her coworkers' assumptions about her capabilities would prevent her from protecting the people who had spent so long underestimating her. The pattern of dismissal at Pinnacle Coffee had become as predictable as the morning rush. Maya arrived each day at 5:30, 30 minutes before her official start time, using the quiet period to check equipment and prepare for the day ahead. Her thoroughness was consistently misinterpreted by her coworkers, as either excessive eagerness to please or an inability to work efficiently under pressure. "Maya's always here early because she needs extra time to figure out the simplest tasks," Jennifer had explained to a new hire the previous week, speaking about Maya as if she weren't standing 3 feet away. "Some people just aren't naturally quick learners. We have to be patient with her." The comment had stung not because of its cruelty, but because of its fundamental misunderstanding of Maya's motivations. She arrived early because reconnaissance and preparation were integral to successful operations. Whether those operations involved clearing hostile buildings or ensuring consistent coffee quality during peak hours. Her military training had taught her that proper preparation prevented poor performance, a principle that applied regardless of the specific context. Maya's precision in following procedures was another source of consistent mockery. She measured coffee grounds to exact specifications, maintained water temperatures within optimal ranges, and cleaned equipment according to manufacturer guidelines rather than the abbreviated shortcuts her coworkers preferred. Jennifer interpreted this attention to detail as evidence of inflexibility and overthinking. "It's just coffee, Maya," Jennifer would say whenever she observed Maya's methodical approach. "You don't need to treat every order like it's brain surgery. Customers want speed, not perfection." But Maya had learned that excellence was a habit, not an accident. The same focus on precise execution that had made her an expert marksman also made her the most consistent barista at Pinnacle Coffee. Her drinks rarely required remakes, her equipment malfunctioned less frequently than others, and her customer satisfaction scores were consistently higher than her coworkers. None of these achievements earned recognition from Jennifer, who remained focused on speed metrics rather than quality outcomes. The morning after Ashley had mentioned the downtown break-ins, Maya observed 3 more individuals whose behavior suggested professional surveillance training. They entered separately, ordered different drinks, and positioned themselves at different tables. But their scanning techniques and departure timing revealed coordinated activity. Maya noted their descriptions and methods in the mental database she maintained automatically, a habit from her military service that had become second nature. "You're doing that staring thing again," Jennifer observed, approaching Maya's station with her usual expression of barely concealed irritation. "Mrs. Patterson from the accounting firm upstairs complained that you made her uncomfortable yesterday. She said you were watching her like she was going to steal something." Maya continued preparing orders while considering her response. Mrs. Patterson had been exhibiting unusual behavior for the past week, arriving at different times, sitting in different locations, and conducting phone conversations in languages Maya recognized but couldn't fully understand. Her pattern suggested intelligence gathering rather than routine coffee consumption, but explaining this observation to Jennifer would require revealing knowledge that baristas weren't supposed to possess. "Hayne, I was making sure she had everything she needed," Maya replied, offering the standard customer service explanation that Jennifer would find acceptable. "Well, try to be less obvious about it," Jennifer said. "Customer comfort is our top priority. Save the security guard act for someone else." The dismissive reference to security work revealed another layer of Jennifer's assumptions about Maya's capabilities. Jennifer seemed to believe that anyone could perform security functions, that vigilance and threat assessment required no special training or expertise. Maya had encountered this attitude frequently in civilian settings, a casual dismissal of skills that required years of development and constant practice to maintain. Ashley approached during the afternoon lull, carrying her textbook and looking thoughtful. "I've been reading about behavioral analysis for my psychology classes," she said. "Did you know that people with military backgrounds often have enhanced situational awareness? They notice things other people miss because their training rewires how their brains process environmental information." Maya nodded non-committally, unsure where Ashley was heading with the observation. "It's fascinating," Ashley continued. "These skills don't just disappear when someone transitions to civilian life. They become part of how that person navigates the world, even in completely different contexts." "That's interesting," Maya replied, wondering if Ashley was making a connection between the theory and Maya's behavior patterns. "I bet if we had someone like that working here, they'd probably notice things about our customers that the rest of us completely miss," Ashley said, glancing meaningfully at Maya before returning to her studies. Maya appreciated Ashley's insight, but it also highlighted the complexity of her situation. Ashley was beginning to recognize that Maya possessed skills beyond coffee preparation, but this recognition created its own challenges. Maya had chosen not to discuss her military background, partly to avoid the assumptions and expectations that such disclosure would bring. Some people became uncomfortable around veterans, others expected constant war stories, and still others assumed that military service automatically translated into specific personality traits or political beliefs. The afternoon brought another wave of suspicious customers, including 2 women who spent 40 minutes in the shop while consuming drinks that should have taken 10 minutes to finish. They photographed the interior layout under the pretense of social media posts, but their camera angles focused on security equipment and exit routes rather than aesthetic elements. Maya served them professionally while memorizing their faces and noting their methods. "Maya, stop hovering around table 12, Jennifer commanded from across the shop. "Those ladies are trying to have a private conversation. Give them some space." Maya retreated to her station, recognizing that Jennifer's interference was preventing her from gathering potentially crucial intelligence. This was the recurring pattern of her civilian work experience. Her training identified threats and opportunities that others missed, but her lack of official authority meant she couldn't act on this information effectively. The evening shift change brought Tom Hassan, a college junior who worked nights to pay for his engineering studies. Tom was friendly and hardworking, but he shared Jennifer's assumption that Maya's careful work habits indicated some kind of cognitive limitation. "Don't worry about the complicated orders tonight," Tom said as they reviewed the evening's catering requirements. "I can handle the specialty drinks if you want to focus on basic coffee and tea service." Tom's offer was well-intentioned, but it reflected the same fundamental misunderstanding that all her coworkers shared. They saw her methodical approach and quiet demeanor as evidence of limitation rather than competence. None of them considered that Maya might be capable of handling complex tasks with the same precision she applied to routine ones. The catering event scheduled for that evening involved serving refreshments during Consolidated Insurance Group's quarterly security briefing. Maya had volunteered for the assignment, recognizing an opportunity to observe the increased security activity she had been tracking throughout the week. Jennifer had initially resisted, suggesting that Maya might be overwhelmed by the pressure of serving corporate executives, but Tom had supported the idea. "It'll be good experience for her," Tom had argued. "Besides, it's just serving drinks and snacks. How complicated can it be?" Tom's casual dismissal of the event's complexity was typical of how her coworkers approached unfamiliar situations. They saw surface elements, serving drinks, maintaining professional appearance, following basic protocols, without recognizing the broader context or potential complications. Maya's military experience had taught her that simple operations could become complex very quickly when circumstances changed unexpectedly. As Maya prepared for the evening's catering duties, she reflected on the systematic nature of the dismissal she experienced at Pinnacle Coffee. It wasn't malicious or intentionally cruel. It was simply the result of assumptions based on incomplete information. Her coworkers saw a quiet woman who worked as a barista and concluded that this role represented the extent of her capabilities. They couldn't imagine that someone with her background would choose service work, so they assumed she must be incapable of anything else. The irony was that Maya's military training had actually prepared her exceptionally well for customer service work. The same skills that enabled her to remain calm under enemy fire also helped her handle difficult customers without losing composure. The attention to detail that made her an expert marksman also ensured that her drinks met exact specifications every time. The situational awareness that had kept her alive in combat zones now allowed her to anticipate customer needs and identify potential problems before they developed. But these connections remained invisible to people who had never experienced the kind of training Maya had received. They saw the surface behaviors without understanding the underlying competencies that produced them. Maya had become accustomed to this misunderstanding, but it still frustrated her when her observations and insights were dismissed simply because they came from someone whose official job description involved making coffee. Tonight's corporate event would test whether her pattern of invisible competence could continue, or whether circumstances would finally force her coworkers to recognize that their assumptions about her capabilities were fundamentally flawed. The evening security briefing at Consolidated Insurance Group was scheduled to begin at 7 o'clock, but Maya noticed the unusual preparations starting much earlier. By 5:30, men in dark suits were conducting systematic sweeps of the 42nd floor conference room, using equipment that went far beyond standard corporate security measures. Their movements and communication patterns indicated federal law enforcement training, suggesting that tonight's quarterly meeting involved much more than routine insurance business. Maya wheeled the catering cart toward the service elevator, her trained eye cataloging the increased security presence throughout the Meridian Tower. Additional guards had been posted at entrances that were normally unmonitored. Surveillance cameras had been repositioned to cover blind spots that most people wouldn't notice. And the building's regular security staff had been supplemented by personnel whose bearing and equipment clearly indicated specialized training. "Remember, this is a high-profile client event," Tom reminded her as they rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. "Just stick to the basic service protocol we practiced. Serve drinks, clear empty cups, stay invisible. These corporate types don't like to be interrupted when they're talking business." Tom's advice revealed his complete misunderstanding of the situation developing around them. He saw the evening as a routine catering assignment with demanding customers, not recognizing the security implications of the preparations they had witnessed. Maya nodded appropriately while mentally reviewing the building's emergency procedures and exit strategies, information she had memorized not from paranoia, but from the ingrained habit of always knowing her operational environment. The conference room occupied the northeast corner of the 42nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Seattle's downtown core and Elliott Bay beyond. Maya noted the sightlines immediately. The windows provided excellent visibility but also created potential vulnerability to external observation or targeting. The room's layout, with its single main entrance and limited cover positions, would be challenging to secure against determined hostile action. "Impressive setup," Tom commented, admiring the polished conference table and high-end audiovisual equipment. "These insurance people really know how to spend money." Maya was more interested in the defensive characteristics of the space. The conference table's solid construction could provide cover in an emergency, the side offices offered potential concealment positions, and the emergency stairwell was accessible through a corridor that connected to the main elevator bank. She filed this information automatically while setting up the beverage station according to the detailed instructions provided by Consolidated's corporate liaison. The first attendees began arriving at 6:45, and Maya immediately recognized that this was not a routine corporate gathering. The participants included individuals whose faces she remembered from classified briefings during her military service, senior intelligence officials, federal prosecutors, and executives from defense contractors involved in sensitive government work. Their presence confirmed her growing suspicion that Consolidated Insurance Group was providing cover for something far more significant than quarterly financial reviews. "Look at these people," Tom whispered as they arranged coffee service near the back of the room. "They all look so serious and important. I bet they're deciding how to raise everyone's insurance premiums." Tom's interpretation of the gathering demonstrated his civilian perspective on corporate power structures, but Maya recognized a different dynamic at work. The body language and interaction patterns of the attendees suggested a crisis management meeting rather than routine business planning. Several participants kept checking their phones with the urgency of people expecting critical updates, and their conversations had the tense undertone of individuals dealing with active threats. Maya served coffee and pastries with professional efficiency while observing the room's dynamics. The meeting's actual purpose became clearer as she caught fragments of conversation during her service rounds. References to compromised assets, intelligence breaches, and coordinated targeting painted a picture of ongoing hostile operations against U.S. interests, with tonight's gathering focused on response coordination. The downtown incidents were definitely reconnaissance, she overheard Assistant Director Sarah Chen of the FBI telling a group of insurance executives. "We're looking at a sophisticated intelligence operation, possibly state-sponsored, targeting companies with federal contracts." Maya's pulse quickened as she recognized the connection between tonight's meeting and the suspicious activities she had been observing at Pinnacle Coffee. The reconnaissance activities, the increased security presence, and the timing of this gathering suggested that the coffee shop had been identified as a surveillance position for monitoring tonight's participants. "Maya, you're moving too slowly," Tom whispered urgently. "These people want their coffee hot, not lukewarm. Pick up the pace." Tom's criticism stung because it misrepresented her careful movement through the room. Maya wasn't moving slowly from inefficiency. She was conducting systematic observation while maintaining the appearance of routine service duties. Her military training had taught her to gather intelligence while appearing to perform mundane tasks, a skill that remained valuable even in civilian contexts. The meeting began promptly at 7 o'clock, with Assistant Director Chen providing an overview of recent security breaches affecting government contractors throughout the Pacific Northwest. Maya continued her service duties while absorbing information that confirmed her worst suspicions about the activities she had observed. The hostile intelligence operation was more extensive than she had initially assessed, involving multiple cell networks conducting coordinated surveillance and data collection. "We believe they're planning something significant within the next 24 hours, Assistant Director Chen reported. The pattern of reconnaissance activities suggests they're preparing for direct action against high-value targets." Maya nearly dropped her coffee pot as the implication struck her. If hostile operatives were indeed planning direct action against high-value targets, and if those targets included the participants in tonight's meeting, then the Meridian Tower represented exactly the kind of concentrated opportunity that professional intelligence services would be trained to exploit. Tom noticed her momentary loss of composure. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya forced herself to maintain professional demeanor while her mind raced through threat scenarios. The reconnaissance activities at Pinnacle Coffee, the building's security vulnerabilities, and the concentration of high-value intelligence targets in a single location created exactly the kind of operational opportunity that her military experience had taught her to recognize and counter. "The intelligence suggests they have detailed knowledge of our security procedures and personnel assignments," Assistant Director Chen continued. "This level of preparation indicates significant resources and professional training." Maya's concern deepened as she realized that her observations from Pinnacle Coffee could provide crucial intelligence about the hostile operations methods and personnel. The individuals she had identified conducting surveillance, their techniques and timing patterns, represented pieces of a larger operational picture that the FBI apparently hadn't fully assembled. "We need to consider the possibility that they have assets positioned in locations we haven't identified," one of the federal prosecutors observed. "Corporate facilities, service businesses, anywhere that provides observation opportunities without attracting attention." Maya's blood ran cold as she recognized the accuracy of this assessment. Pinnacle Coffee provided perfect observation opportunities for anyone interested in monitoring the Meridian Tower's security procedures and personnel movements. If hostile operatives had indeed identified the coffee shop as a surveillance position, then Maya and her coworkers could be in immediate danger. "Maya, stop eavesdropping and focus on your job," Tom hissed, his frustration with her distracted behavior becoming more obvious. "This is important business. We don't need to understand it. We just need to serve coffee and stay out of the way." Tom's admonishment highlighted the fundamental challenge Maya faced in her current situation. Her military training enabled her to recognize threats and gather intelligence that could be crucial for protecting the people in this room, but her civilian role provided no authority or credibility for acting on this information. She was expected to remain invisible and ignorant, serving coffee while potentially life-threatening situations developed around her. The meeting's discussion shifted to specific countermeasures and response protocols, information that Maya knew could be valuable for preventing whatever hostile action was being planned. But her position as catering staff meant that her observations and insights would be dismissed as irrelevant or inappropriate, regardless of their potential accuracy or importance. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself caught between her civilian role's expectations and her military training's imperatives. The intelligence she was gathering could save lives, but sharing it would require revealing knowledge and capabilities that baristas weren't supposed to possess. The same pattern of dismissal she experienced daily at Pinnacle Coffee was now preventing her from contributing to a situation where her expertise could make the difference between success and catastrophic failure. The irony was bitter and frustrating. Maya possessed exactly the kind of tactical knowledge and situational awareness that the meeting's participants desperately needed. But her current identity as a coffee server made her insights invisible and irrelevant to the people who most needed to hear them. The conventional security response unfolded exactly as Maya had feared it would. Assistant Director Chen concluded the briefing at 8:30 with a series of standard countermeasures that addressed symptoms rather than the underlying tactical realities of the threat they faced. Increased building security, enhanced background checks for service personnel, and coordination with local law enforcement represented textbook responses to intelligence threats. But Maya recognized immediately that these measures would be insufficient against the kind of sophisticated operation she had been observing. "We'll implement a lockdown protocol for all federal contractors in the downtown area," Director Chen announced to the assembled executives. "No one enters or exits designated buildings without proper credentials and escort procedures. This should prevent further reconnaissance and limit their operational opportunities." Maya continued clearing coffee cups while fighting the urge to point out the fundamental flaws in this approach. Lockdown protocols were effective against random threats or amateur operations, but the surveillance activities she had witnessed at Pinnacle Coffee demonstrated professional-level planning and execution. The operatives conducting reconnaissance had already gathered the information they needed. Preventing future surveillance would not address the immediate threat of planned direct action. On record. Tom nudged her as they packed up the remaining pastries. "These government people sure love their security theater," he whispered. "Bunch of suits trying to look important by overreacting to probably nothing." Tom's civilian perspective on federal security measures was understandable but dangerous. He interpreted the increased precautions as bureaucratic overreach rather than recognizing them as potentially inadequate responses to genuine threats. Maya had seen similar disconnects between civilian expectations and operational realities during her military service, where political considerations often influence tactical decisions in counterproductive ways. The meeting's participants filed out with expressions of professional confidence, discussing implementation timelines and resource allocation as if enhanced security procedures alone could neutralize sophisticated hostile operations. Maya watched Assistant Director Chen coordinate with building security, noting how their planned countermeasures focused entirely on preventing future intelligence gathering rather than addressing the operational capability that hostile forces had already developed. "Building security will establish checkpoints at all entrances starting tomorrow morning," the Chief Security Officer explained to Director Chen. "Will require photo identification and advance registration for all visitors, including service personnel and delivery drivers." Maya recognized the tactical limitation of this approach immediately. The checkpoint system would prevent casual reconnaissance, but would be ineffective against operatives who had already completed their surveillance phase and were preparing for direct action. More critically, the new security measures would create predictable choke points and delay emergency response times, potentially making the building more vulnerable rather than less. "What about the existing service contracts?" asked Margaret Foster, Consolidated Insurance Group's corporate security director. "We have regular vendors for maintenance, catering, cleaning services. Do we suspend all of those until this threat is resolved?" Director Chen considered the question with the careful deliberation of someone accustomed to balancing security requirements against operational necessity. "Essential services can continue with enhanced screening procedures. We can't shut down normal business operations indefinitely based on intelligence assessments alone." Maya almost dropped the serving tray she was carrying. The conversation was revealing exactly the kind of operational window that professional intelligence services were trained to exploit. Enhanced screening procedures for essential services would create delays and confusion that could be used to mask hostile infiltration, while the assumption that normal business operations could continue safely ignored the tactical advantages that the surveillance phase had already provided to potential attackers. "The FBI's threat assessment indicates we have at least 48 hours before any potential direct action," Director Chen continued. "That gives us time to implement proper countermeasures and coordinate with federal resources." Maya's military experience had taught her to distrust intelligence assessments that provided false comfort about timing and enemy intentions. Hostile operations rarely followed predictable schedules, and assuming 48 hours of safety could prove catastrophically wrong if the intelligence was incomplete or deliberately misleading. The reconnaissance activities she had observed suggested that operational planning was already complete, meaning direct action could occur much sooner than the FBI anticipated. Tom finished packing the catering supplies and approached Maya with obvious relief. "Finally done with this corporate spy thriller," he said. "I thought they were going to keep talking about security threats all night. Good thing none of that stuff affects us regular people." Tom's casual dismissal of the security briefing's implications demonstrated the civilian tendency to compartmentalize threats as problems that affected other people in other places. Maya understood that this psychological distance was necessary for normal functioning, but it also created dangerous blind spots when threats crossed the boundaries between official and civilian spaces. As they waited for the service elevator, Maya overheard Director Foster discussing personnel security with her corporate team. "We need to run enhanced background checks on all service personnel with building access," Foster said. The coffee shop, maintenance crews, cleaning services, anyone who has regular contact with our operations. Maya's pulse quickened as she realized that enhanced background checks would inevitably reveal her military service record. Her Army Ranger credentials, combat deployments, and specialized training would suddenly become visible to people who had spent months, assuming she was just another barista struggling with simple tasks. The revelation would create its own complications, potentially disrupting whatever operational window remained for preventing the threat she had identified. The elevator arrived, and Maya found herself sharing the confined space with two FBI agents who were discussing tactical preparations in voices they assumed were too quiet for civilian staff to overhear. Their conversation revealed additional flaws in the federal response strategy that made Maya's growing frustration almost unbearable. Local SWAT teams will be on standby starting tomorrow evening, Agent Rodriguez was telling his partner. Response time should be under 12 minutes for any incident in the downtown core. 12 minutes, Maya thought grimly. In her military experience, hostile operations were typically completed within the first 3 to 5 minutes of initial contact. By the time SWAT teams arrived, professional operatives would have achieved their objectives and initiated withdrawal procedures. The federal response plan was designed for hostage situations or random violence, not sophisticated intelligence operations with specific tactical goals. Tom noticed her tense expression as they descended toward the ground floor. "You look worried about something," he observed. "Don't let all that security talk get to you. These corporate types always think they're more important than they really are." Maya forced a reassuring smile while her mind raced through the tactical implications of everything she had overheard. The federal response plan contained fundamental assumptions about enemy capabilities and intentions that could prove disastrously wrong. More critically, the enhanced security measures would create new vulnerabilities while failing to address the existing ones that professional operatives had already identified and planned to exploit. The elevator reached the ground floor, and Maya pushed the catering cart toward Pinnacle Coffee's storage area while observing the building's evening security procedures. The regular guards had been supplemented by federal agents who were conducting periodic patrols and monitoring surveillance equipment, but their focus remained on preventing unauthorized entry, rather than detecting threats that might already be positioned inside the building's operational perimeter. "I'm glad we don't have to deal with all that security drama," Tom said as they stored the catering equipment. "Let the government people worry about their spy games. We'll just keep making coffee and staying out of their way." Tom's perspective represented the civilian assumption that security threats remain safely contained within official channels and professional boundaries. Maya knew from experience that hostile operations deliberately targeted the intersection between official and civilian spaces, exploiting exactly the kind of compartmentalized thinking that allowed people to believe they were safely removed from threats affecting nearby targets. As she completed her evening duties, Maya found herself in an increasingly impossible position. Her military training enabled her to recognize the fundamental flaws in the federal response strategy, but her civilian role provided no mechanism for sharing this knowledge with people who had the authority to act on it. The same pattern of dismissal that characterized her daily experience at Pinnacle Coffee was now preventing her from contributing to a situation where tactical expertise could mean the difference between preventing an attack and suffering massive casualties. Yaka, the conventional security response was failing before it had even been fully implemented, and Maya was powerless to intervene, despite possessing exactly the kind of knowledge and experience that could save lives. The system designed to protect high-value targets was ignoring the most valuable intelligence asset available to it, simply because that asset happened to be wearing a barista's apron instead of a federal badge. Maya stood outside Pinnacle Coffee at 11:15 that night, her keys trembling slightly in her hand as she made the decision that would change everything. The building was officially closed, the federal security measures were scheduled to begin implementation the following morning, and everyone from Assistant Director Chen to Tom Hassan believed they had 48 hours to prepare for whatever threat might materialize. Maya knew they were wrong. The reconnaissance patterns she had observed, the timing of tonight's security briefing, and the operational indicators her military training had taught her to recognize, all pointed to the same conclusion. The hostile operation was already in its final preparation phase. While federal agents were planning enhanced checkpoints and SWAT teams were organizing standby procedures, professional operatives were likely finalizing their approach routes, and weapon positioning for an attack that could come within hours, not days. She unlocked the coffee shop's front door and slipped inside, moving through the familiar space with the heightened awareness that came from operating in potentially hostile territory. The federal response plan had focused entirely on hardening official targets while ignoring the civilian spaces that provided perfect staging areas for sophisticated attacks. Pinnacle Coffee, with its location on the ground floor of the Meridian Tower and its clear sight lines to all major entrances, represented exactly the kind of tactical advantage that professional operatives would seek to exploit. Maya's decision to return to the coffee shop violated every protocol her civilian employment required, but it aligned perfectly with the military principles that had guided her through 3 combat deployments. When official channels failed to address identified threats, individual soldiers had the responsibility to take whatever action was necessary to protect their unit and complete the mission. Tonight, her unit consisted of everyone in the Meridian Tower, and her mission was preventing an attack that the federal response plan was inadequately prepared to counter. She moved to the storage room and retrieved the small tactical flashlight she kept in her personal locker, a habit from her military service that her coworkers would have found puzzling if they had discovered it. Maya had never fully adjusted to civilian life's assumption that emergency equipment was unnecessary in routine workplace environments. Her military experience had taught her that emergencies rarely announced themselves in advance, and being prepared for unexpected situations was simply a matter of professional responsibility. The coffee shop's layout took on new tactical significance as Maya surveyed it with the systematic approach she had once used to assess potential ambush sites in Afghanistan. The service counter provided excellent cover positions, the espresso machine could serve as concealment for observation purposes, and the storage areas offered multiple escape routes through the building's service corridors. More importantly, the shop's security cameras had been modified to feed into the building's central monitoring system, giving Maya potential access to surveillance capabilities that could prove crucial for identifying hostile preparations. Maya unlocked the manager's office and accessed the security terminal using credentials she had memorized during her months of careful observation. Jennifer's casual approach to password security had made this access possible, though Maya felt a twinge of guilt about exploiting her supervisor's carelessness for unauthorized purposes. But military necessity sometimes required bending civilian rules, especially when those rules prevented effective response to legitimate threats. The building's surveillance system revealed exactly what Maya had feared she would find. Figures were moving through the parking garage and service areas with the deliberate precision of people conducting final reconnaissance before operational deployment. Their movements avoided the camera positions that regular building occupants would naturally encounter, suggesting intimate knowledge of the surveillance system's coverage patterns and blind spots. Maya counted at least 6 individuals positioning themselves throughout the building's lower levels, each carrying equipment bags that appeared to contain more than routine maintenance supplies. Their coordination and timing indicated extensive planning and rehearsal, the kind of preparation that professional intelligence services devoted to high-priority operations. The federal assessment of 48 hours until potential action had been catastrophically wrong. She reached for her cell phone to contact building security, then stopped as she realized the fundamental problem with this approach. Her observations were based on surveillance activities that she had no official authority to conduct, using security systems she had no legitimate access to operate. Any warnings she provided would immediately raise questions about how she had obtained the information, potentially compromising her ability to continue monitoring the developing situation. More critically, building security was trained to respond to conventional threats like burglary or vandalism, not sophisticated intelligence operations conducted by professionally trained operatives. The security guards would follow standard protocols that assumed hostile actors would behave like common criminals, an assumption that could prove disastrously wrong when dealing with personnel who had received military-level tactical training. Maya made a second decision that violated even more protocols than her first. She accessed the building's emergency communication system and began documenting everything she observed, creating a detailed intelligence report that could be transmitted to federal authorities if the situation escalated beyond her ability to handle independently. Her military training had emphasized the importance of maintaining accurate records during developing situations, even when immediate communication with higher authorities was impossible. The hostile operatives were moving with increasing urgency, suggesting that their operational timeline was accelerating beyond whatever schedule the FBI had estimated. Maya watched through the surveillance feeds as they established positions that would provide tactical control over the building's primary exits and emergency response routes. Their placement demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how federal security forces would approach the building during a crisis situation. One of the operatives appeared to be conducting electronic reconnaissance of the building's communication systems, using equipment that Maya recognized from her military experience as designed for intercepting and jamming radio frequencies. If hostile forces gained control of the building's communications, they could prevent security personnel from coordinating effective responses and delay the arrival of federal reinforcements beyond any tactically useful time frame. Maya realized that she was witnessing the final preparation phase of an operation designed to trap high-value intelligence targets in a controlled environment where they could be systematically eliminated or captured. The timing coincided with tomorrow morning's implementation of enhanced security measures, which would concentrate all federal personnel and corporate executives in predictable locations with limited escape routes. The elegance of the hostile plan was both impressive and terrifying. By allowing federal authorities to believe they had time to implement countermeasures, the operatives had ensured that their targets would be gathered in easily controlled locations when the actual attack commenced. The enhanced security procedures would become force multipliers for the hostile operation rather than protective measures for the intended targets. Maya's military training provided several options for disrupting operations of this type, but all of them required capabilities and equipment that she didn't currently possess. She was one person with limited resources facing a coordinated team of professional operatives who had spent weeks or months preparing for this specific mission. The conventional approach would be to alert federal authorities and evacuate the building, but the communications jamming equipment she had observed suggested that standard notification procedures might already be compromised. She made her third decision of the night, knowing that it would irrevocably change her relationship with civilian life and force her to reveal capabilities that she had spent months keeping hidden. Maya opened her personal locker and retrieved the items she had hoped never to need again: her military identification, emergency contact information for her former commanding officers, and the tactical equipment she had maintained despite having no official reason to possess it. The quiet barista who had been dismissed and underestimated for 8 months was about to demonstrate exactly why underestimating people with specialized training was such a dangerous mistake. Maya Rodriguez had tried to blend into civilian life, but civilian life was about to discover that some kinds of training never really disappeared. They just waited for the right circumstances to become visible again. Maya moved through the coffee shop with the fluid precision of someone whose muscle memory had been forged in far more dangerous places than corporate office buildings. Her civilian facade dropped away completely as she accessed the tactical mindset that had kept her alive through 3 combat deployments, her movements becoming economical and purposeful in ways that would have shocked Jennifer and Tom if they could have witnessed the transformation. She began by establishing a secure communication protocol, using her personal cell phone to contact her former commanding officer through encrypted channels that remained active for all retired Special Operations personnel. Colonel Marcus Webb answered on the second ring, his voice immediately shifting to operational alertness when he recognized Maya's identification code and heard her situation report. "Rodriguez, you've been out for 8 months, Colonel Webb said after Maya finished describing the hostile preparations she had observed. Are you certain about what you're seeing? This sounds like a major intelligence operation." "Confirmed, sir. 6 operatives minimum, professional equipment, coordinated positioning for building control. They've been conducting surveillance on federal personnel for weeks. The target is tomorrow morning's security implementation, but I assess they're moving to operational phase tonight." Colonel Webb's response demonstrated the kind of immediate trust and confidence that Maya had missed desperately during her months in civilian employment. "What's your current tactical situation? Do you have resources for independent action?" Maya inventoried her available capabilities while maintaining visual contact with the surveillance feeds. "Limited equipment, single operator, but I have building access and surveillance coverage. The hostile force appears to be unaware of my presence or capabilities." "Can you maintain observation and delay their timeline until federal response arrives?" "Negative, sir. They have communications jamming capability, and the building's security force is not equipped for this level of threat. Federal response time will be insufficient, even if notification is successful." The conversation established Maya's operational authority in ways that civilian protocols never could have achieved. Colonel Webb understood immediately that Maya possessed both the training and judgment necessary to assess the situation accurately, and his questions focused on tactical capabilities rather than bureaucratic procedures or civilian safety concerns. Rodriguez, I'm authorizing you to take whatever action you deem necessary to prevent this operation. Federal assets are 40 minutes out minimum, and you're right that communications are likely to be compromised. This is your show. Maya felt the familiar surge of clarity that came with having clear operational authority and defined mission parameters. For the first time in 8 months, she was functioning in her area of genuine expertise, rather than pretending to be someone whose capabilities matched civilian expectations. She moved to the storage area and retrieved the tactical equipment she had maintained, despite having no official reason to keep it. Her disassembled M4 rifle had been stored in component parts across multiple locations, a precaution that had seemed excessive when she first established it, but now proved strategically crucial. Maya had spent countless hours practicing rapid assembly procedures, maintaining proficiency in skills that civilian life provided no opportunity to use. The assembly process required 12 seconds from first component to operational readiness, a time that Maya had achieved through hundreds of repetitions during her military service and maintained through monthly practice sessions that none of her civilian coworkers knew about. Her hands moved through the familiar sequence automatically. Upper receiver attached to lower receiver, bolt carrier group inserted and secured, charging handle positioned, magazine loaded and inserted with 30 rounds of ammunition she had hoped never to need again. The completed weapon transformed Maya's tactical situation entirely. She was no longer a civilian observer with limited options for intervention. She was a trained special operations soldier with the equipment and authority necessary to engage hostile forces on equal terms. The psychological shift was as important as the practical one, restoring the confidence and operational mindset that months of civilian dismissal had gradually eroded. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Maya used the building's surveillance system to track the hostile operatives' movements while formulating her engagement strategy. 6 confirmed targets distributed across 3 floors, with primary concentration in the parking garage and service levels where they could control building access points. Their positioning indicated familiarity with federal response procedures and building emergency protocols, suggesting extensive planning and possibly inside intelligence support. The first operative was positioned near the main electrical systems, carrying equipment that appeared designed for controlled power disruption. Maya recognized this as a standard technique for forcing evacuation procedures while preventing effective security response. By controlling electrical systems, hostile forces could manipulate lighting, elevators, and electronic security measures to create tactical advantages during the operational phase. The second and third operatives had established positions covering the primary parking garage entrances, with overlapping fields of fire that would prevent vehicular escape or the arrival of unauthorized reinforcements. Their equipment included automatic weapons and what appeared to be explosives, suggesting that their mission parameters included eliminating witnesses and preventing intelligence recovery. Maya identified the 4th operative conducting electronic surveillance from the building's communications center, confirming her assessment that standard notification procedures would be ineffective. The jamming equipment he was deploying would prevent building security from coordinating with federal authorities and delay emergency response beyond any tactically useful time frame. The 5th and 6th operatives were moving through the upper floors, apparently conducting final reconnaissance of target locations and evacuation routes. Their methodical approach to clearing potential obstacles suggested that tomorrow morning's attack would involve systematic elimination of high-value personnel rather than simple intelligence gathering or intimidation tactics. Maya's tactical analysis revealed several critical vulnerabilities in the hostile operations deployment. Their positioning assumed that building security would follow predictable response procedures and that any resistance would come from conventional security forces rather than military-trained personnel. More importantly, their focus on controlling official access points had left civilian service areas relatively unmonitored, providing Maya with movement opportunities that they hadn't anticipated. She began her operation with the communications specialist, recognizing that restoring building-wide communication capability was essential for coordinating any broader response effort. Maya moved through the service corridors with the silent precision she had learned during urban combat operations, using maintenance passages that provided concealed access to the target location. The hostile operative was focused entirely on his electronic equipment, confident that building security posed no meaningful threat to his mission. Maya's approach went undetected until she was close enough to ensure that her intervention would be both swift and permanent. Her military training had emphasized the importance of decisive action when engaging enemy personnel, and civilian considerations about proportional response were tactically irrelevant when dealing with armed operatives conducting hostile intelligence operations. The engagement lasted less than 10 seconds. Maya's combat training proved overwhelmingly superior to whatever preparation the hostile operative had received, and her tactical advantage of surprise eliminated any possibility of extended confrontation. She secured his communications equipment and confirmed that building-wide jamming had been terminated, restoring the electronic surveillance capabilities she would need for tracking the remaining 5 operatives. Maya's transformation from dismissed barista to operational soldier was now complete, but she understood that her most challenging engagements still lay ahead. 5 professional operatives remained positioned throughout the building, and their discovery of their colleagues' elimination would immediately escalate the situation beyond the covert reconnaissance phase they had been conducting. The quiet competence that her civilian coworkers had consistently underestimated was about to be demonstrated in ways that would prove definitively why dismissing people based on incomplete information could be such a catastrophic mistake. The building's surveillance system crackled back to life as Maya restored communications, and within seconds her actions became visible to people who had spent 8 months assuming she was incapable of handling anything more complex than a coffee order. The security control room's emergency protocols activated automatically, transmitting alerts to Assistant Director Chen, building security, and the federal task force coordinating the intelligence response to what they still believed was a future threat. Maya's radio crackled with Colonel Webb's voice as he coordinated federal response from the Pentagon. "Rodriguez, we're showing massive system restoration from your location. Status report." "First hostile eliminated, communications restored, 5 targets remaining," Maya responded while tracking enemy movements through the restored camera feeds. "Building security is being activated, but they're not equipped for this level of threat. Federal response is inbound, ETA 25 minutes. Can you maintain position until backup arrives?" Maya watched through the surveillance monitors as the remaining hostile operatives realized their communications specialist had been compromised. Their movements shifted immediately from reconnaissance to direct action, abandoning any pretense of covert operation as they moved toward their assigned positions for what appeared to be an immediate assault on the upper floors, where federal personnel would be arriving for tomorrow's enhanced security implementation. "Negative, sir. They're accelerating to immediate action. I'm engaging." Assistant Director Chen's voice suddenly joined the radio frequency, her tone mixing professional authority with complete bewilderment. "Who is this operator? We don't have any federal assets positioned in that building." Colonel Webb's response cut through the confusion with military efficiency. "Director Chen, you have a retired Army Ranger on site with full operational authority. Specialist Maya Rodriguez, 3 combat deployments, expert marksman, and currently your best asset for preventing this attack." The silence that followed revealed the shock of federal officials discovering that their most capable responder was someone they had never heard of, working in a role that no one had connected to military service. Maya could almost hear Assistant Director Chen processing the revelation that the barista who had served coffee during last night's security briefing possessed exactly the tactical expertise they desperately needed. Maya moved toward the parking garage where 2 operatives were establishing a kill zone designed to eliminate federal personnel as they arrived for duty. Her approach required crossing open space that would expose her to hostile fire, but her military training had prepared her for exactly these kinds of tactical challenges. She used the building's architectural features for cover while advancing toward positions that would allow effective engagement of targets who were expecting to face conventional security guards rather than special operations personnel. The first hostile operative detected her movement as she crossed between support pillars, his automatic weapon tracking toward her position with the fluid precision of someone who had received professional training. Maya's response demonstrated the difference between theoretical preparation and combat experience, her return fire achieving target elimination before the hostile operative could complete his engagement sequence. The second operative reacted to his partner's elimination with immediate tactical movement, seeking cover behind concrete barriers while attempting to coordinate with the remaining team members through radio communications that Maya's restoration of building systems had compromised. His professional competence was evident in his movement techniques and weapons handling, but Maya's superior position and combat experience provided decisive tactical advantages. Federal units, be advised that hostile forces are using automatic weapons and explosive devices, Maya transmitted while maintaining visual contact with her target. Building is not secure for standard entry procedures. Assistant Director Chen coordinated federal response from the building's emergency command center, her voice reflecting growing appreciation for Maya's tactical capabilities. Rodriguez, federal tactical teams are requesting your assessment of enemy positions and capabilities. Maya provided detailed intelligence while simultaneously engaging the second parking garage operative, her military training allowing her to maintain multiple operational tasks simultaneously. 2 eliminated in parking levels, 3 remaining on upper floors. They have building plans and knowledge of federal response procedures. Recommend alternative entry through service levels to avoid prepared kill zones. The engagement with the second operative required more tactical sophistication than the first, as he used cover effectively and demonstrated familiarity with urban combat techniques. Maya's advantage came from her superior knowledge of the building's layout and her ability to predict his movement patterns based on standard tactical doctrine. The engagement concluded when Maya flanked his position using service corridors that civilian building plans didn't show, but that she had memorized during months of careful observation. 2 down, 3 to go, Maya reported while advancing toward the elevator bank, where the remaining operatives were establishing positions for engaging federal personnel during tomorrow's security implementation. The third hostile operative had positioned himself to control the primary elevator access, using explosive charges to create choke points that would trap federal personnel in confined spaces during the planned attack. Maya's approach required disabling these charges while avoiding detection, a combination of demolitions knowledge and stealth techniques that her Army Ranger training had specifically emphasized. Rodriguez, building security, is reporting multiple explosions and automatic weapons fire, Colonel Webb transmitted. Are you maintaining tactical control? Affirmative, sir. Hostile explosives have been neutralized, advancing on remaining targets. Maya's engagement with the third operative revealed the true sophistication of the hostile operation. His equipment included communications intercept capability, detailed building plans, and tactical gear that indicated state-level intelligence support. More disturbingly, his documents revealed that the attack was designed to eliminate specific federal personnel who had been conducting investigations into foreign intelligence operations throughout the Pacific Northwest. The elimination of the third operative provided Maya with intelligence that transformed the entire operation from defensive response to strategic counterintelligence. The hostile team wasn't simply conducting random terrorism. They were implementing targeted assassination of federal investigators who had identified and were preparing to disrupt a significant espionage network. Director Chen, the hostile operation is designed to eliminate your investigation team, Maya transmitted while advancing toward the final 2 operatives. They have detailed intelligence on federal personnel assignments and investigation targets. Assistant Director Chen's response revealed the strategic implications of Maya's discovery. Rodriguez, that intelligence is classified at the highest levels. How did hostile forces obtain access to operational details? Maya's military experience had taught her to recognize indicators of insider cooperation during hostile operations, and the evidence she was discovering pointed towards systematic intelligence compromise at levels that extended far beyond the current attack. The remaining 2 operatives were positioned to eliminate specific federal personnel whose investigations had apparently threatened espionage operations that foreign intelligence services were determined to protect. Unknown, Director, but recommend immediate operational security review. The hostile team has information that suggests ongoing intelligence compromise at federal levels. Maya reached the 32nd floor where the final 2 operatives had established positions designed to eliminate Assistant Director Chen and her core investigation team during tomorrow morning's security meeting. Their positioning demonstrated intimate knowledge of federal procedures and personnel assignments that should have been compartmentalized beyond hostile access. The psychological impact of Maya's successful counter-operation was becoming evident through the radio communications she intercepted from the remaining hostile operatives. They had discovered that their carefully planned mission was being systematically dismantled by a single operator whose existence they had never anticipated, whose capabilities they had never accounted for, and whose position in the building they had dismissed as tactically irrelevant. The quiet barista they had observed during weeks of surveillance had transformed into their most dangerous opponent, someone whose military training and tactical expertise exceeded their own preparation and whose knowledge of the building's layout provided decisive operational advantages they hadn't considered possible. The final two operatives had barricaded themselves in the conference room where last night's security briefing had taken place, transforming the space where Maya had served coffee into a fortified position designed to eliminate federal personnel as they arrived for duty. Through the building's restored surveillance system, Maya watched them position explosive charges at entry points, while establishing overlapping fields of fire that would make conventional assault tactics suicidal for standard law enforcement personnel. Assistant Director Chen's voice carried new respect and urgency as she coordinated with Maya through the tactical communication channel. Rodriguez, federal tactical teams are positioned outside the building, but they're requesting your assessment before attempting entry. You have operational control until they can establish secure access. Maya studied the conference room's layout through multiple camera angles, noting how the operatives had used furniture and equipment to create defensive positions that maximized their tactical advantages while minimizing exposure to return fire. Their preparation revealed professional military training and extensive familiarity with federal response procedures. But Maya recognized vulnerabilities in their positioning that her months of working in the building had uniquely prepared her to exploit. Director Chen, the conference room has service access through the adjoining offices that aren't visible on standard building plans, Maya transmitted while moving through maintenance corridors that her coworkers had never known existed. The hostiles are positioned for frontal assault but haven't secured their flanks. The irony wasn't lost on Maya that her detailed knowledge of the building's hidden spaces had been developed during 8 months of being dismissed as someone who couldn't handle complex tasks. While Jennifer and Tom had assumed she was struggling with basic job requirements, Maya had been conducting systematic reconnaissance of every corridor, service area, and emergency route in the Meridian Tower. Maya accessed the conference room service entrance through a maintenance hatch that building security didn't even know was connected to the executive level. Her approach required crawling through ventilation systems and utility spaces that her compact build and military conditioning made navigable, though civilian employees would have found them impossible to traverse effectively. The first hostile operative was monitoring the main entrance through sophisticated surveillance equipment, his attention focused entirely on the approaches that federal tactical teams would logically use for building entry. Maya's flanking maneuver went undetected until she was positioned directly behind his defensive position, her military training, having taught her that the most dangerous attacks came from directions that enemies didn't expect to defend. Her engagement eliminated the first operative with the silent efficiency that Army Ranger training had emphasized for operations requiring stealth and precision. Maya secured his communications equipment and explosive controls, preventing the remaining operative from detonating charges that would have killed federal personnel throughout the building's upper floors. The final operative realized his tactical situation had changed when his partner's radio went silent, but Maya's superior positioning allowed her to observe his movements while remaining concealed behind cover that her civilian coworkers would never have thought to use tactically. The conference table where corporate executives had discussed security procedures 12 hours earlier now provided ballistic protection during a firefight that those same executives could never have imagined occurring in their workplace. Last hostile is barricaded in the northeast corner of the conference room, Maya reported while maintaining visual contact through her tactical scope. He has automatic weapons and appears to be preparing explosive charges for building demolition. Colonel Webb's response revealed the strategic implications of Maya's successful counter-operation. Rodriguez. Intelligence indicates this was designed as a decapitation strike against federal investigators. Your intervention has prevented elimination of key personnel investigating foreign espionage networks throughout the region. Maya's engagement with the final operative required patience and tactical precision rather than aggressive assault techniques. He had established an excellent defensive position with multiple escape routes and explosive devices positioned to eliminate anyone who attempted direct confrontation. But Maya's knowledge of the conference room's layout, developed during months of serving coffee and pastries to corporate executives, provided her with tactical options that the hostile operative couldn't have anticipated. She used the room's audiovisual equipment and furniture placement to create angles of approach that bypassed his primary defensive preparations. The same attention to detail that had made her the most consistent barista at Pinnacle Coffee now enabled her to identify sight lines and movement opportunities that someone unfamiliar with the space would have missed entirely. The final engagement demonstrated the culmination of Maya's tactical evolution from dismissed civilian employee to operational special forces soldier. Her approach combined professional military training with intimate environmental knowledge developed through months of careful observation that her coworkers had interpreted as evidence of limitation rather than competence. "Target eliminated, building secure," Maya transmitted as she confirmed the neutralization of the final hostile operative. "All explosive devices have been disarmed, and intelligence materials are secured for federal recovery." Assistant Director Chen's response carried amazement that was obvious even through tactical radio communication. "Rodriguez, federal teams are entering the building now. Your actions have prevented what our intelligence suggests would have been the largest intelligence disaster in Pacific Northwest history." Maya began collecting intelligence materials and weapons from the eliminated operatives while federal tactical teams secured the building floor by floor. The evidence she gathered revealed the scope of the hostile operation and confirmed that foreign intelligence services had been conducting systematic espionage activities against federal investigators, defense contractors, and corporate entities involved in sensitive government work. Tom Hassan arrived at the building 40 minutes later as part of the civilian evacuation process, his face showing complete bewilderment as he observed federal agents, crime scene investigators, and military personnel securing what had been a routine corporate office building when he left work the previous evening. Maya watched him through the building's surveillance system as he tried to process the transformation of his familiar workplace into an active counterintelligence operations scene. "Maya Rodriguez?" Tom asked a federal agent who was coordinating witness interviews. "The barista who works at Pinnacle Coffee, she did all this." The federal agent's response revealed how completely the situation had changed perceptions of Maya's capabilities. Specialist Rodriguez is a decorated Army Ranger with 3 combat deployments and expert ratings in tactical operations. Her intervention prevented a coordinated attack that would have eliminated multiple federal officials and compromised ongoing national security investigations. Jennifer Walsh arrived 30 minutes after Tom, her expression showing the same disbelief that Maya had witnessed in civilian environments when people discovered that their assumptions about someone's capabilities had been fundamentally wrong. Jennifer approached Assistant Director Chen with obvious confusion about how her supposedly limited employee had become the central figure in a major counterintelligence operation. "I don't understand," Jennifer said to Director Chen. "Maya is just a barista. She has trouble with complicated drink orders. How could she possibly have the training to do what everyone is saying she did?" Director Chen's response captured the lesson that Maya's coworkers were beginning to learn about the danger of underestimating people based on incomplete information. "Ms. Walsh, your employee is one of the most highly trained soldiers in the United States Army. What you interpreted as limitation was actually the discipline and precision that military service develops in exceptional individuals." Maya emerged from the building as federal agents completed their initial evidence collection, her civilian clothes torn and stained from crawling through maintenance spaces, but her bearing showing the confidence that came from operating successfully in her area of genuine expertise. For the first time in 8 months, she had been able to use her actual skills rather than pretending to be someone whose capabilities matched civilian expectations. The transformation was complete. But Maya understood that her relationship with civilian life had been permanently altered by the night's events. She could never again be just the quiet barista whose observations and insights were dismissed as irrelevant, because everyone now knew that underestimating her had nearly resulted in catastrophic consequences for national security. 3 weeks after the incident that federal investigators were now calling the Meridian Tower counter-operation, Maya Rodriguez stood in front of a classroom filled with FBI agents, federal marshals, and corporate security directors who had traveled from across the Pacific Northwest to attend her briefing on threat recognition in civilian environments. The same conference room where she had once served coffee to executives who barely acknowledged her presence now hosted audiences who hung on every word of her tactical analysis. The most dangerous assumption in security work is believing that threats will present themselves in familiar forms, Maya began, her voice carrying the authority that came from having proven her expertise under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. Professional hostile operatives deliberately exploit our tendency to dismiss people in situations that don't match our preconceived expectations. Assistant Director Chen sat in the front row, taking notes with the focused attention of someone who had learned firsthand how costly it could be to overlook unconventional sources of intelligence and capability. The federal task force investigating foreign espionage operations had discovered that Maya's observations from Pinnacle Coffee contained more actionable intelligence about hostile surveillance activities than months of conventional investigative work had produced. Ms. Rodriguez identified and tracked hostile reconnaissance activities for weeks before our intelligence services recognized that an operation was developing, Director Chen had explained to a congressional oversight committee the previous week. Her civilian employment position provided unique observation opportunities that traditional intelligence gathering methods had missed entirely. Maya's training sessions had become mandatory for federal personnel throughout the region, but she had insisted on maintaining her position at Pinnacle Coffee rather than accepting offers for full-time federal employment. The coffee shop had become an unofficial intelligence collection point, with Maya's colleagues now understanding that their quiet coworker possessed capabilities that extended far beyond beverage preparation. Herefront, Jennifer Walsh had undergone the most dramatic transformation in her understanding of Maya's role and capabilities. The same supervisor who had once criticized Maya for moving too slowly and staring at customers had become her most vocal advocate within the corporate structure, requesting additional security training and implementing observation protocols based on Maya's recommendations. "I spent months telling Maya she was overthinking simple situations," Jennifer admitted during a security debrief with building management. "What I thought was paranoia was actually professional threat assessment. She was doing security work that none of us recognized or appreciated." Tom Hassan had returned to his evening shifts at Pinnacle Coffee with a completely altered perspective on his coworkers' capabilities and the potential complexity of seemingly routine workplace environments. His casual dismissal of security concerns had been replaced by careful attention to the behavioral indicators that Maya had taught him to recognize. "Maya showed me that being aware of your surroundings isn't about being paranoid," Tom explained to new employees during orientation sessions that now included basic security awareness training. "It's about being responsible for the safety of everyone who works and shops here." The broader impact of Maya's actions extended throughout the downtown Seattle business community, where corporate security directors were reevaluating their assumptions about threat recognition and employee capabilities. Maya's success had demonstrated that valuable intelligence and tactical expertise could exist in roles that traditional security assessments had overlooked entirely. Ashley Chen had become Maya's unofficial liaison with the psychology academic community, documenting the cognitive biases that had prevented trained professionals from recognizing Maya's expertise despite clear behavioral indicators. Her research was contributing to new training protocols for federal agents and security personnel. Maya's case demonstrates how institutional assumptions about job roles can create dangerous blind spots in threat assessment, Ashley explained during a presentation to the American Psychological Association. "We consistently underestimated someone whose actual qualifications exceeded those of most security personnel." Maya's influence extended beyond immediate security applications to broader discussions about veteran transition services and civilian employment practices. Her experience had revealed how frequently organizations failed to recognize and utilize the specialized skills that military veterans brought to civilian workplaces. Colonel Webb had established a consulting program that connected retired special operations personnel with civilian employers, using Maya's case as an example of how military expertise could provide unexpected advantages in apparently unrelated professional contexts. The program emphasized that tactical training and situational awareness remained valuable capabilities regardless of the specific employment environment. Specialist Rodriguez's intervention saved lives and prevented a significant intelligence disaster, Colonel Webb testified before a Senate committee reviewing veteran employment programs. Her success demonstrates that military training provides capabilities that remain valuable in civilian contexts, even when those connections aren't immediately obvious. The federal investigation into the hostile espionage network had revealed connections to intelligence operations in 12 states, with Maya's intelligence collection providing crucial evidence for prosecutions and counterintelligence activities that extended far beyond the Pacific Northwest. Her observations from Pinnacle Coffee had contributed to the identification and neutralization of foreign intelligence assets who had been operating undetected for years. Maya continued serving coffee to customers who now included federal agents, corporate executives, and security professionals who sought her insights on threat recognition and tactical assessment. The transformation was remarkable, but not unwelcome. She had finally found a way to integrate her military expertise with civilian employment in a manner that utilized her actual capabilities, rather than requiring her to pretend they didn't exist. The quiet barista, who had been consistently underestimated, had become a recognized expert whose observations and recommendations influenced security policies throughout the region. Maya's journey from dismissed employee to valued consultant demonstrated that individual competence and dedication could overcome institutional assumptions, but it also revealed how much valuable capability organizations routinely overlooked when they allowed superficial role definitions to limit their recognition of employee potential. Her story had become a case study in multiple professional contexts, but Maya remained focused on the practical application of lessons learned from her experience at Pinnacle Coffee and the Meridian Tower counter-operation. 6 months after the Meridian Tower incident, Maya Rodriguez addressed a packed auditorium at the Veterans Transition Center in Tacoma, her story having become a powerful example of how assumptions about capability and potential could dramatically underestimate the people we encounter every day. The audience included veterans struggling with civilian employment, corporate hiring managers seeking to understand military skill translation, and civilians who had begun questioning their own assumptions about the people serving them coffee, delivering packages, or working in roles that society often dismissed as requiring minimal expertise. Look around your workplace, your neighborhood, your daily interactions, Maya began, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had replaced her earlier uncertainty. That person you barely notice, whose contributions you dismiss, whose insights you ignore, they might be exactly the person you need most when everything goes wrong. The story had resonated far beyond military and security communities, becoming a viral phenomenon on social media platforms where it was shared with captions about hidden talents, second chances, and the importance of treating everyone with respect. Maya had been invited to speak at universities, corporate conferences, and community organizations throughout the country, but she remained committed to her shifts at Pinnacle Coffee, recognizing that her credibility came from continuing to live the lessons she taught others. Maya's experience challenges us to examine our own biases about capability and potential, said Dr. Sarah Martinez, a workplace psychology researcher who had studied the case extensively. How many times do we interact with people whose actual qualifications and expertise we never discover, because we make assumptions based on their current role or quiet demeanor? The coffee shop had become an unexpected destination for leadership development professionals and diversity training consultants who brought groups to observe Maya's work environment and discuss the implications of her story. Pinnacle Coffee had embraced this attention, establishing a formal partnership with the Veterans Transition Center and implementing hiring practices that actively sought military veterans and other candidates whose backgrounds might not immediately suggest their potential value. Jennifer Walsh had leveraged her experience with Maya to advance within the corporate structure, becoming a regional training director who specialized in helping managers recognize and develop employee potential that traditional assessment methods might overlook. Her transformation from someone who dismissed Maya's capabilities to an advocate for comprehensive employee evaluation had become part of the corporate training curriculum. I learned that my job as a manager isn't just to assign tasks and measure immediate performance, Jennifer explained during management training sessions. It's to recognize capabilities that might not be immediately obvious and create opportunities for people to contribute at their highest level. Tom Hassan had completed his engineering degree and accepted a position with a defense contractor, but he continued working part-time at Pinnacle Coffee because of the unique learning environment Maya's presence had created. His experience with Maya had taught him that expertise could be found in unexpected places, and that learning from experienced colleagues was often more valuable than classroom instruction alone. Working with Maya taught me that real expertise isn't always accompanied by certificates or job titles, Tom said during his graduation speech at the University of Washington. Sometimes the most knowledgeable person in the room is the one everyone assumes knows the least. The broader impact extended to corporate hiring practices throughout the region, where human resources departments had begun implementing assessment techniques designed to identify capabilities that traditional resume reviews and interviews might miss. Maya's case had demonstrated that valuable skills and experience could be hidden behind employment gaps, career transitions, or roles that society didn't associate with advanced expertise. Ashley Chen had completed her psychology graduate program and established a research initiative focused on improving recognition of diverse talents in workplace environments. Her work emphasized that organizations routinely missed opportunities to utilize employee capabilities simply because they didn't create mechanisms for discovering and developing potential that existed outside conventional career progression patterns. Maya's story illustrates a principle that applies far beyond military veterans, Ashley explained during her doctoral defense presentation. Every workplace contains individuals whose actual capabilities exceed what their current roles require or reveal. The challenge is creating systems that recognize and utilize this hidden potential. The Federal Task Force investigating foreign espionage operations had established a civilian observer network based on Maya's model, training employees in service industries and civilian roles to recognize and report suspicious activities that professional intelligence personnel might miss. The program acknowledged that people in routine civilian jobs often had unique observation opportunities that traditional security systems couldn't replicate. Maya's influence had extended to military transition programs, where her experience was used to help retiring service members understand how their skills could be valuable in civilian contexts that didn't immediately appear military-related. Her success had demonstrated that tactical training, situational awareness, and operational discipline remained assets regardless of the specific employment environment. The lesson that resonated most powerfully with audiences was Maya's demonstration that quiet competence and careful observation were often more valuable than loud confidence and immediate visibility. Her story had become a counter-argument to workplace cultures that prioritized self-promotion over actual capability and immediate impact over sustained excellence. Don't let anyone else write your final chapter. Maya concluded her presentations with the same message she had learned during her time behind enemy lines in Afghanistan. As long as you're alive and capable of action, you can always choose to keep fighting for something larger than yourself. The message applied to veterans transitioning to civilian careers, employees feeling undervalued in their current roles, and anyone who had been dismissed or overlooked because others couldn't see past surface appearances to recognize underlying potential and expertise. Maya Rodriguez had proven that sometimes the person everyone overlooks is exactly the one they need most. 2 years after the Meridian Tower incident, Maya Rodriguez's influence had rippled across the United States in ways that no one could have predicted when she first walked into Pinnacle Coffee, seeking a quiet civilian job that would help her transition away from military service. Her story had become a case study taught in business schools, military academies, and psychology programs, but perhaps more importantly, it had begun changing how millions of people thought about the individuals they encountered in their daily lives. The Maya Rodriguez Foundation, established with proceeds from her book deal and speaking engagements, had created a nationwide network of programs designed to help organizations recognize and develop hidden talent among their employees. The foundation's core principle was elegantly simple. Every workplace contained individuals whose actual capabilities exceeded what their current roles revealed. And discovering this potential required systematic changes in how organizations assessed and developed their human resources. We're not just talking about military veterans, though they're certainly an important part of this conversation, explained Dr. Patricia Williams, the Foundation's research director and a former corporate psychologist who had left her consulting practice to join Maya's mission. We're talking about single mothers who have developed extraordinary problem-solving skills through years of managing complex family logistics, immigrants who speak multiple languages and understand diverse cultural perspectives, older workers who have accumulated decades of experience that companies often overlook, and countless others whose true value isn't captured by traditional hiring and evaluation processes. The Foundation's flagship program, called Second Look, worked with corporations to implement assessment techniques that could identify employees whose potential had been underestimated or overlooked. The program had achieved remarkable success rates, with participating companies reporting significant improvements in productivity, innovation, and employee satisfaction after implementing the Foundation's recommendations. Maya continued working at Pinnacle Coffee 3 days per week, a decision that initially puzzled business reporters and motivational speaking agents who couldn't understand why someone with her celebrity and expertise would maintain employment in a role that had previously undervalued her contributions. Her explanation revealed the depth of her commitment to the principles her experience had taught her. I stay at Pinnacle Coffee because it keeps me connected to the reality that most people face in their daily work lives, Maya explained during a Harvard Business School case study interview. It's easy to talk about recognizing hidden talent when you're standing on a conference room stage. It's harder to actually live those principles when you're dealing with morning rush customers, and equipment that breaks down, and coworkers who are having personal problems that affect their performance. Maya's continued presence at the coffee shop had transformed it into something unprecedented in corporate America, a working laboratory for inclusive management practices where executives from major corporations came to observe how recognition and development of employee potential could be implemented in real workplace environments rather than theoretical training scenarios. Jennifer Walsh had become the subject of her own case studies in management transformation, having evolved from someone who consistently underestimated Maya's capabilities to a nationally recognized expert in employee development and potential assessment. Her journey demonstrated that managers could learn to overcome their biases and assumptions, but it required conscious effort and systematic changes in how they approached employee evaluation and development. The hardest part wasn't learning to recognize Maya's expertise, Jennifer reflected during a leadership conference in Chicago. The hardest part was accepting that I had been wrong about her for so long, and then figuring out how to apply the lessons from that mistake to other situations where I might be making similar errors in judgment. Jennifer's transformation had inspired a new approach to management training that emphasized humility, continuous learning, and the recognition that managers themselves needed to grow and adapt their assumptions as they gained experience with diverse employees and changing workplace dynamics. Tom Hassan had become an advocate for career exploration programs that helped college students understand how their interests and skills might translate into careers they had never considered. His experience working alongside Maya had taught him that expertise and capability could develop in unexpected contexts, and that some of the most valuable learning opportunities came from working with people whose backgrounds differed significantly from traditional academic and professional pathways. Maya taught me that learning doesn't stop when you graduate, Tom explained to engineering students at the University of Washington. Some of the most important lessons I learned came from working with someone whose experience was completely different from mine, in a job that had nothing to do with my major, during hours when I thought I was just earning money to pay for school. He wore it. Ashley Chen had completed her doctoral research on workplace bias and hidden talent, with Maya's case serving as the foundation for a new understanding of how organizations could systematically discover and develop employee potential that traditional assessment methods routinely missed. Her research had attracted attention from major corporations seeking to improve their human resource practices, and from government agencies interested in better utilizing the diverse talents of their workforce. Maya's story demonstrates that talent recognition isn't just about being fair or inclusive, though those are important values, Ashley explained during her dissertation defense. It's about organizational effectiveness and competitive advantage. Companies that can identify and develop hidden talent among their existing employees have significant advantages over competitors who rely solely on external hiring and traditional assessment methods. The federal government had implemented several programs based on Maya's model, including civilian observer networks that trained employees in routine government positions to recognize and report security concerns that professional intelligence personnel might miss. These programs acknowledged that people in administrative, maintenance, and service roles often had unique observation opportunities that could contribute to national security objectives. Maya's influence had extended internationally, with military organizations and corporate entities in allied nations implementing training programs based on her experience and the research that had grown from her story. Her demonstration that individual competence and dedication could overcome institutional assumptions had resonated with audiences facing similar challenges in different cultural and organizational contexts. The ongoing impact of Maya's story reflected a fundamental shift in how societies thought about talent, potential, and the value of every individual's contributions to collective success. Her experience had proven that transformative capability could exist in the quietest corners of the most routine workplaces, waiting for the right circumstances to reveal itself. 5 years after Maya Rodriguez had first walked into Pinnacle Coffee seeking anonymity and a fresh start, she stood before a joint session of Congress testifying about legislation that would fundamentally change how the United States approached veteran employment, civilian skill assessment, and workplace inclusion. The woman who had once been dismissed for suggesting alternate extraction routes during a military briefing now commanded the attention of senators and representatives who recognized that her insights could reshape American employment practices for generations to come. The Hidden Talent Recognition Act isn't just about helping veterans transition to civilian careers, Maya testified, her voice carrying the measured authority that had developed through years of speaking to audiences who initially underestimated her capabilities. It's about creating systematic changes in how our entire society identifies, develops, and utilizes human potential that currently goes unrecognized in workplaces across America. The proposed legislation, largely based on research generated by Maya's foundation and the programs that had grown from her experience, would provide tax incentives for companies implementing comprehensive talent assessment programs, establish federal grants for organizations creating second-chance employment initiatives, and require government contractors to demonstrate efforts to identify and develop hidden capabilities among their existing workforce. Senator Maria Gonzalez, chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, had become one of the legislation's strongest advocates after visiting Pinnacle Coffee and observing how Maya's continued employment there had created a unique model for inclusive workplace practices. Ms. Rodriguez has demonstrated that when we create environments where people can contribute at their highest level, everyone benefits: the individual, the organization, and society as a whole. Maya's testimony was supported by data from thousands of organizations that had implemented programs based on her model, showing measurable improvements in productivity, innovation, employee retention, and customer satisfaction. But the most compelling evidence came from individual success stories of people whose potential had been discovered and developed through systematic efforts to look beyond surface appearances and traditional qualification markers. We've documented over 12,000 cases of employees whose actual capabilities significantly exceeded what their job descriptions required or their initial assessments revealed. Dr. Patricia Williams reported to the Congressional Committee. These individuals weren't lacking in talent or potential. They were lacking in opportunities for that potential to be recognized and developed. The Foundation's research had identified patterns that extended far beyond military veterans to include displaced workers, career changers, immigrants with foreign credentials, people returning to work after extended family care responsibilities, and individuals whose educational backgrounds didn't match traditional expectations for their desired roles. Maya's case had become the catalyst for recognizing that talent and capability existed in far more diverse forms than conventional hiring practices acknowledged. Maya's influence had reached the highest levels of corporate America, with Fortune 500 CEOs regularly citing her story during shareholder meetings and strategic planning sessions. The business case for comprehensive talent recognition had become undeniable, with companies implementing Maya-inspired programs reporting competitive advantages that extended well beyond their immediate workforce to include improved customer relationships, enhanced community engagement, and stronger brand reputation. The Maya effect, as business journalists had termed it, had created a new standard for corporate social responsibility that emphasized developing existing employee potential rather than simply hiring externally for advanced positions. Companies that demonstrated commitment to recognizing and developing hidden talent were attracting better candidates, retaining employees longer, and achieving higher performance metrics across virtually every measurable category. Pinnacle Coffee had become an unlikely pilgrimage destination for business leaders, management consultants, and organizational development professionals who came to observe how a routine service business had transformed itself into a model for inclusive workplace practices. The coffee shop's success had inspired similar transformations in restaurants, retail stores, manufacturing facilities, and service organizations throughout the country. Jennifer Walsh had been promoted to Vice President of Human Resources for the parent company that owned Pinnacle Coffee, and her management philosophy had become the subject of business school case studies and corporate training programs. Her journey from someone who consistently underestimated employee potential to a nationally recognized expert in talent development demonstrated that organizational cultures could change when leaders committed to examining and overcoming their assumptions. Maya taught me that my job as a manager wasn't to fit people into predetermined boxes, Jennifer explained during a keynote address at the National Human Resources Association conference. My job was to help people discover what boxes they could break out of, and then create opportunities for them to contribute at levels that nobody had previously imagined possible. Tom Hassan had founded a nonprofit organization that connected college students with mentors whose career paths challenged traditional expectations about professional development. His program emphasized that learning and growth could occur in any environment when people approached their experiences with curiosity and openness to unexpected sources of knowledge and inspiration. Maya showed me that expertise doesn't always come with credentials, and that some of the most valuable learning happens when we work alongside people whose backgrounds and experiences differ significantly from our own, Tom explained to university administrators considering partnership programs with his organization. Ashley Chen's research had evolved into a comprehensive framework for organizational psychology that emphasized the identification and development of diverse forms of intelligence and capability. Her work had influenced hiring practices, performance evaluation systems, and career development programs throughout both private industry and government agencies. Maya's story had become required reading in military academies, where officer candidates learned about the importance of recognizing and utilizing all available resources and capabilities regardless of their conventional presentation. The military had implemented systematic changes in how it assessed personnel for advancement and specialized assignments, acknowledging that valuable skills and potential could exist in forms that traditional evaluation methods might overlook. The international impact continued expanding, with governments and organizations worldwide implementing programs based on Maya's model for recognizing and developing hidden talent. Her experience had demonstrated universal principles about human potential that transcended cultural and organizational boundaries, inspiring changes in employment practices from Tokyo to London to Sao Paulo. Maya Rodriguez had proven that individual actions, when aligned with universal principles of human dignity and potential, could create ripple effects that transformed entire societies. Her quiet competence had become a catalyst for systematic changes that would benefit millions of people who had been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed based on incomplete understanding of their actual capabilities and potential contributions. Maya Rodriguez still arrives at Pinnacle Coffee 30 minutes early each morning, not because she needs extra time to figure out simple tasks, but because preparation and excellence remain her guiding principles. The coffee shop displays a small plaque near the register, in honor of those who serve quietly and competently, regardless of recognition. On this particular Tuesday morning, a young woman approached the counter with nervous energy and careful posture that Maya immediately recognized. Former military, struggling with civilian transition, carrying skills that nobody around her understood or valued. Maya had seen this pattern hundreds of times since her story became public. "What can I get you?" Maya asked, noting the woman's tactical watch and the way her eyes automatically scanned exit routes. "Just a coffee, black," the woman replied, then hesitated. Are you really Maya Rodriguez?" Maya smiled, remembering her own desperation during those early months when she felt invisible and undervalued. "I am." "And you're active duty or recently separated?" "Army medic, discharged 6 months ago." Nobody wants to hire someone whose main qualification is treating gunshot wounds in combat zones. The woman's voice carried the familiar frustration of someone whose expertise seemed irrelevant in civilian contexts. "Combat medics make excellent emergency room technicians, paramedics, and medical device specialists," Maya replied, already reaching for a business card from the Veterans Transition Network. "More importantly, you've developed decision-making skills under extreme pressure that most civilians never acquire. The question isn't whether you're qualified, it's whether employers are smart enough to recognize what they're looking at." Maya handed over the coffee and the business card. "Call this number. Tell them Maya sent you. Someone will help you translate your skills into civilian terms that hiring managers can understand." As the young veteran left with renewed purpose, Maya reflected on how one moment of recognition could change everything. Her story had started with being underestimated, but it had evolved into something much more important, proof that everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are. Have you ever been underestimated because of your quiet approach or unconventional background? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone who needs to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We explore stories of hidden heroes and quiet champions every week, proving that the most extraordinary people are often hiding in the most ordinary places. What story should we tell next?